Yesterday has come and gone, leaving some of us to mourn. Times we had and friends we lost, and while nature took its course, we have seen the many faces of slavery. We have seen the British Empire fall. We have seen Hitler's contribution to history. We have seen the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall. We have seen famine. We have seen wars. As you well imagine, we have seen nothing yet, because in time to come, America will have a black president. In time to come, there's going to be an active world government. In time to come, the world will see human life cheaper than dirt. In time to come, from outer space, aliens will land on the earth. Team Africa will win the World Cup. Marijuana will sell in the shop. Science will produce bread out of stone, and then create the first human clone. Technology will reach a new high. Buses and cars will fly in the sky. Trinidad will make a nuclear bomb. In time to come, let me hear you looking about. In time to come. In time to come. In this new millennium, we're going to see some strange things happening. Papa la papa le do 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 papa la pala lo pala le. Moving from the dark ages, man has progressed in stages. Through the stone and iron age, till we turn another page, and we saw the adventures of Alexander, waging war in his obsession for conquest. Inventions like the chariot and the saber, the weapons that put Europe under duress. Mankind achievements sometimes so great, and its glorious moment mark the passage of time. But wait, in time to come, mankind will have a colony on the moon. In time to come, the Calypso will be a top 40 tune. In time to come, scientists will synthesize silver and gold. In time to come, people will have real sex by remote control. The first dead man will come back alive. Cancer and AIDS victims will survive. Babies will born with mustache and beard. Penis and kidneys will be repaired. The government will ban cigarettes. Breakfast and lunch will be a tablet. A 2-year-old will split the atom. I love you. In time to come. In time to come. In a park, all you go see some strange things in this millennium. Mark my words. Bala bolo 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 pa pa bala 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 bala. Ay no lelo. That day when the Wright brothers, after tremendous horrors, got their little plane to soar, all of mankind stood in awe. Just like when that great scholar Benjamin Franklin discovered what would be electricity. And again, when Sir Alexander in person gave the world the first telephone company. But all of that is a drink of rum in our drinking glasses, compared with what is still to come. An asteroid will destroy New York City. California will submerge under the sea. Almost every athlete will be bionic. Every national park will be Jurassic. Computers will compose Calypso. Explorers will find El Dorado. Man will begin to travel in time. Police will stop adultery and crime. People won't go to church anymore. And there will be a gender world war. Preachers will heal the blind, deaf, and dumb. Get up back, let me audio. In time to come. In time to come. La ba la ba la ba ba. Guys, trouble. Ba la ba look. Look out, audio. I'm coming now. I'm coming up to audio now. Nowadays, the things we see have us in a quandary, wondering what will be next in the world of science and sex. We have seen already the tacit acceptance by the world regarding same-gender romance. And we know that according to modern science, life or death could depend on the circumstance. Communication take over now, and in man's expectation, there is nothing time won't allow. Let me hear you. An exorcist will capture a living ghost. A transvestite will become its universe. An East Indian will win the Calypso crown. Scientists will make old people come back young. Advertisements will light up the skies, and holograms will dazzle the eyes. Women will walk naked in the tongue. Things will go up and never come down. To go to Tobago, people will walk. Monkey and dog will learn how to talk. Satmarat will have a Negro grandson. In time to come. In time to come. In time to come. Yesterday has come and gone, leaving some of us to mourn. Times we had and friends we lost, and while nature took its course, we have seen the many faces of slavery. We have seen the British Empire fall. We have seen Hitler's contribution to history. We have seen the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall. We have seen famine. We have seen wars. As you well imagine, we have seen nothing yet, because in time to come, America will have a black president. In time to come, there's going to be an active world government. In time to come, the world will see human life cheaper than dirt. In time to come, from outer space aliens will land on the earth. Team Africa will win the World Cup. Marijuana will sell in the shop. Science will produce bread out of stone, and then create the first human clone. Technology will reach a new high. Buses and cars will fly in the sky. Trinidad will make a nuclear bomb. In time to come. Let me hear you looking about. In time to come. In time to come. In this new millennium, we're going to see some strange things happening. Papa la pala papa lele do 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 papa pala pala do pala lele. Moving from the dark ages, man has progressed in stages. through the stone and iron age, till we turn another page, and we saw the adventures of Alexander, waging war in his obsession for conquest. Inventions like the chariot and the saber, the weapons that put Europe under duress. Mankind achievements sometimes were great, and its glorious moments mark the passage of time. But wait, in times to come, mankind will have a colony on the moon. In time to come, the Calypso will be a top 40 tune. In time to come, scientists will synthesize silver and gold. In time to come, people will have real sex by remote control. The first dead man will come back alive. Cancer and AIDS victims will survive. Babies will born with mustache and beard. Penis and kidneys will be repaired. The government will ban cigarettes. Breakfast and lunch will be a tablet. A 2-year-old will split the atom. In time to come. In time to come. In time to come. Can I pack? All you go see some strange things in this millennium. Mark my words. That day when the Wright brothers, after tremendous horrors, got their little plane to soar, all of mankind stood in awe. Just like when that great scholar Benjamin Franklin discovered what would be electricity. And again, when Sir Alexander in person gave the world the first telephone company. But all of that is a drink of rum in our drinking glasses, compared with what is still to come. An asteroid will destroy New York City. California will submerge under the sea. Almost every athlete will be bionic. Every national park will be Jurassic. Computers will compose Calypso. Explorers will find El Dorado. Man will begin to travel in time. Police will stop adultery and crime. People won't go to church anymore. And there will be a gender world war. Preachers will heal the blind, deaf, and dumb. In time to come. Get up back in the audio. In time to come. In time to come. La ba la ba la ba ba. I covered. Ba la ba look. Look out, audio. I'm coming now. I'm coming at audio now. Nowadays, the things we see have us in a quandary, wondering what will be next in the world of science and sex. We have seen already the tacit acceptance by the world regarding same-gender romance. And we know that according to modern science, life or death could depend on the circumstance. Communication take over now, and in man's expectation, there is nothing time won't allow. Let me hear you. An exorcist will capture a living ghost. A transvestite will become its universe. An East Indian will win the Calypso crown. Scientists will make old people come back young. Advertisements will light up the skies, and holograms will dazzle the eyes. Women will walk naked in the tongue. Things will go up and never come down. To go to Tobago, people will walk. Monkey and dog will learn how to talk. Satmaraj will have a Negro grandson.
Satmaraj will have a Negro. Oi, oi, oi. Oh, oh, yes. Good evening, and welcome to Politics 101. Edwin Ayong, the crazy man of Calypso, in time to come. Some call it revelation. You know, the Christians have that part of the Bible, you know, revelation, you know, in time to come. I call it the black prophetic tradition. the ability to project from where you are and to expand the gaze into the future. Some people call it futuristic. The Calypso comes out of what David Rudder calls the Caribbean belly. The Caribbean belly. One of the great Calypsos in time to come. Of course, he sang that before Obama became president, and Obama, in time to come, America would have a black president, and it happened. And all the things that crazy is, and them chaps ain't got to know university, you know. They ain't got to know university. The creative intellect, the creative imagination, that's the bedrock of our Guyana and our Caribbean and beyond, the African people. In time to come, the ability to tell our story. We always have something to say. And we live in a society that doesn't want us to talk. I think they posted something today on comments I made. I think it was a reel from either last night's program or the night before, I can't remember. But it said that, you know, we can't build a multiracial society without multiracialists. And that if our people are voting according to race, you can't beat them. But use that to the best of our ability. And that is, if Indians want to vote PPP and Africans want to vote against the PPP, don't try to tell them they're wrong and impose you must not vote race. There was a time when we said that, and we had to say it at a particular time. But today, people are showing over and over and over. And so we are going back to what we started to say in 1961 with Sidney King. So look, if black people don't want Indian people to rule them and Indian people don't want black people to rule them, then so be it. Let us accept that reality. Ideologically, some of us may not like it, but that's the reality, and people are doing it over and over again. And so we go back to 1961 and we said, look, let us vote how we want to vote. And at the end of the election, let us all sit down based on the number of votes we have in a government and run the country together. Run the country together. There's nothing strange in our culture. You know, sometimes husband and wife broke up and they live in the same home. In the interest of the children, in the interest of stability. Sometimes wife live upstairs, husband live downstairs. Sometimes these things happen. So rather than be beating people over there, like I said, there was a time in the 70s and the 80s we made some progress. You know, the historical circumstances allowed us. And we pushed, we meaning led by the WPA, but not the WPA alone, but led by us. Led by us. we pushed as far as we could to get blacks and Indians to move together as the working class. And we pushed it as far as we could. And 1992, we thought, oh boy, we thought that we had succeeded to a large extent. And then when we went to the elections in 1992, the Indians who were marching behind us went back and voted PPP. The Africans who were marching behind us went back and voted PNC. They're telling us something. And so therefore, we accept that reality. Some of us, 30 years, 40 years later, still have not come to grips with the fact that that's the reality of Guyana. I can tell you because I study it and teach it for 30-odd years. It's not just Guyana, all over. Look what's happening in that place, Israel. The ordinary Israelis are not opposed to what Israel is doing to the Palestinians and Lebanon and so on. They're not opposed to it. And we have to understand that ethnicity and race are tremendous sociological pulls. And rather than trying to beat people, why you vote in race? Why you vote in race? People vote their interests. And their interests include their racial interests. And if you see 30 billion barrels of oil, and Indian people are saying, oh boy, for we to get out of poverty, we got to keep we hands on that oil. And the PPP got their hands on the oil now, and we gonna rally around them to keep the proceeds from that oil in Indian hands. And African people have a right to say the same thing. Why are you beating them up? All we're saying is when they're done vote, let me sit down and run the country together. And I think they played that reel today. And of course, number East Indian, people call them trolls and all kind of story. Look, they're real people. I'm not saying that some of them are not PPP trolls, but those people who are commenting on those things are real people. And Indian Guyanese tend to do a better job at going under those posts and commenting. African people will comment here and there, but I don't think we into the political commenting on political thing. We will comment on social thing, Lola Dahl and so on. We there. When it comes to politics, because of fear, we don't comment on the things, even when we agree with them politically. So most of the time when I post stuff or they post stuff about me, Indian people jump and start making the comments. And of course, when I said that, some of them cussed me out and so on. One of them said, "It is the first time I hear a good thing from David Hines." Here's the thing. I've been talking about power sharing since 1961, meaning the tradition, Kwayana, right? He's the man who introduced it in 1961. But as an activist, I became involved in that drive in the early 2000s. You know, people like myself from the WPA, Tacuma Ogunseye, who's on tonight, and you have people like Aubrey Norton and McAllister and so on from the PNC, Sherwood Low. And then on the PPP side, you had one man, Moses Nagamoto. And we raised the issue and put it on the front line. And we pushed Desmond Hoyt, just before he died, to accept power sharing. He said power sharing is an idea whose time has come. He died in 2002, December, and in 2002, August, he declared that. So here, 24 years later, I am saying the same thing I said then. And my detractors are saying, it's the first time I hear something good from David Hines. Right? That's the thing they always ask you. Where you been when Burnham, the band, split peas? Where you been when Burnham, the band Flower? Well, I was there. We were there. we should have been, standing up for you to talk your nonsense today. That's why I tell that young boy who I love, Elston Lowe, I did what you cannot do today. All you can do today is yap. You cannot stand up in a revolutionary way. You have not. I'm not saying you cannot, but to date you have not stand up in a revolutionary way. You have not risked your liberty and your life against this PPP. I risk my liberty and my life against the government of the day. When you do that, talk to me. I'm not playing sport with these little boys who Teacher George said the motor run, they have to wear bib. I did what I'm challenging you to do today. And I paid for it. We paid for it. Ogunseye is coming on. We know what the inside of a jail look like for years. Because we stood up against what was wrong in our time. Oh, you don't get me going. Share the life, because we're going to be doing it tonight. We come on here tonight and with some good news. The High Court ruled today that the government was wrong to stop the subvention in August of 2022 that was mandated to go to Ipadaji. You all hear me? The Supreme Court, the High Court, Justice Roxanne George, ruled that the government was wrong. And the government gave Ipadaji the money for the rest of 2022 because that money was passed by law in the budget for Ipadaji. And to come in the middle of the budget cycle and to take away the money flew in the face of natural law, flew in the face of the law. And so the court has said it was wrong and they must pay Ipadaji the money. Good news. I say good news. Because we have had problems with the court. I know Roxanne George has gotten so many people on the opposition side, so many African Guyanese vexed with some of our rulings in the past couple of years. And I have been patient here on this program. Some of you all blaze me, understandably so, because my argument is that I'm not interested in whether Roxanne George is PPP or PNC or whatever the case may be. Roxanne George, like most Guyanese judges and lawyers, they are not activist judges. They rule very conservatively. They stay very close to what is called the letter of the law. And they don't merge the letter and the spirit of the law. I'm talking here about the Thurgood Marshall model. Thurgood Marshall argued when he was the lone African American on the Supreme Court in the United States of America. He had perhaps still the most dissenting views in the history of the Supreme Court. And his argument was that he was on the court not to contract rights, but to expand rights. And so many of the rulings which used the letter of the law to contract rights, he said, no, the spirit of the law is that you must expand rights. And I am guided always by the Thurgood Marshall notion. It could only come from Thurgood Marshall because he was African American. And the rights of African Americans, like the rights of African Guyanese, were contracted in the most heinous way for 400 years. And so the yearning for the expansion of rights has to be in the political and social DNA of Africans. I say that every day. Don't tell me that I must not talk about race. You were not enslaved. You were not enslaved. What do you know of slavery? Who only slavery know? Asks C.L.R. James. He asked it about cricket. But we expand it. What do you know? You who were not enslaved are telling me that I must not talk about slavery and the contradictions of slavery and the consequences of slavery. It is the height of disrespect that I will not stand for in Guyana. I don't care who you are, Amerindian, Indian, Chinese, Portuguese, even black people. And this confounded nonsense must stop, where people who were not enslaved are telling us who went through slavery that we must not talk about it, and some of us bow to that nonsense. Hear me tonight. This African will not stand for that confounded nonsense. And so, I say, Thurgood Marshall had to say what he said. Because, yes, the rights of all peoples at some point in history were contracted. The rights were taken away over time. But the group whose rights were taken away the most and the longest, it was Africans. And so the loudest in terms of the expansion of rights has to be the African. And I'm so frustrated in Guyana with African leaders who ought to know better, who do not see it as their responsibility to go to the mountaintop and to do like Martin Luther King and say, I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land, the black prophetic tradition. I may not get there with you, but as a people we will get there. Or Walter Rodney, who said, I would like to live a long life. Longevity is a good thing. But if I die, use my body as a barricade for the revolution. A little bit more radical on the surface than Dr. King, but they're saying the same thing. And you black people have lost your way, some of you, if not a lot of you. Your calling in this Guyana and this Caribbean has to be different from the calling of other groups. Yes, there are things that you share with other groups. Amerindian genocide was real, but it wasn't slavery. They did not lose their humanity by law, by politics, by economics, and by custom. Indentureship was real, but it did not even come close to the loss of humanity, your humanity. I'm not comparing. I'm saying what is damn right. There is a way in which oppression is oppression, no matter the degree. And in that sense, we share some things in common with our brothers and sisters, Amerindian and Indian. But in the history of human, economic, political, and social relations, the political and economic system and human moral compass that discriminated the most was slavery. And this black skin is a testimony of that. Every time we walk and we talk, we remind the world of that. That is why they want to shut me up. That is why they want to shut black people up in Guyana. Because the shame, Indian people didn't do black people, not Amerindian people did not enslave black people, and on the face of it, they ought not to be afraid of the black man telling his story and standing up. But the present accumulation of wealth and privilege, when we open our mouth to protest the past, we are also protesting the present. And it is the present accumulation of wealth and discriminatory state that resembles the slave state. They don't care about the slave state. What they care about is the state to which we speak and to which we demand, as Brother Malcolm says. And before Brother Malcolm, Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Nobody has to teach the black man and the black woman and the black child that. We have lived that from the middle passage to the present. All right, share the live, because we have Brother Tacuma and Sister Audreyanna. They're ready to go. As I said, for those of you who are joining us in the last couple of minutes, the court today ruled that the government was wrong, legally and by extension politically, to withdraw, take away the subvention from IPADG. And the court has ordered that for the financial cycle, the budget cycle of 2022, the government must pay IPADG. Now, the court has not said anything about 2023, 24, 25, 26, but I think it has said enough to say to the government, you're treading on dangerous grounds. Sometimes we black people are hard on ourselves, you know. And why IPADG do? Well, IPADG had the presence of mind to go to court. And the court has ruled on IPADG side. And I'm saying that it has ruled for the financial year of 2022. But I think the larger question here is whether this government is not violating the Constitution and the treaty. Let's put aside the Constitution, the treaty that they've signed on to at the United Nations, bringing into being the International Decade of the People of African Descent, which talk about recognition and the absence of discrimination for Africans. By removing that $100 million per year that President Granger made possible, God bless him, because we discussed here a lot, but when he did things in our interest, we must say it loud and clear, God bless him. It was a little drop in the ocean. $100 million is a drop of $1.55 trillion. It's now gone to 1.6. We got to come back for 60 billion after just a couple of months. God bless David Granger. And Guyana signed on to that treaty. The court, I am arguing, must say whether the removal of the subvention, not only for 2022, period, whether that in itself is not a violation of the treaty to which you are a signature. You are a signatory to that. We're not playing. All right, let me bring in our guests now and let's begin the session. Brother Ogunseye, Sister Audreyanna Thomas. No introduction, Brother Tacuma Ogunseye, of course, is the co-leader of the Working People's Alliance. And Sister Audreyanna Thomas is well known as a civil society voice. Um, and she has been involved in a number of issues. I'm getting a little feedback from somebody. I don't know if it's Brother Tacuma. I rather suspect it's him. Um,
No, it's not me.
yeah, if it's your phone, you want to put the phone away from where you are. Yeah. Um, all right. Good evening, Brother Tacuma. Good evening, Sister Audreyanna.
Good evening, Dr. Hines, and welcome to your viewers on Politics 101 and Sister Audreyanna. We haven't met for a long time, so it's good to be in this company, a fine company.
Good evening, my brothers, and good evening to the viewers. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you.
indeed, Brother Tacuma. I haven't spoken and seen you in a while, so
Yes.
it's really a pleasure to be a part of this company indeed.
Yes, thank you, and I'm glad to have you all. And we advertise this program as the other perspective because we live in a plural society, a plural ethnically, but also plural ideologically. I was reminded by um, Sister Manza Walton, who, whenever she's asked about groups like the WPA and so on, she's one of the few younger and newer politicians who doesn't try to disparage small parties. She argues that each party represents a particular ideological tendency in the society that is necessary. And I say that to say that, some of our younger activists are not in tune with the diversity of our society. When they talk about diversity, they talk about ethnic diversity. And then once you say ethnic diversity, you're shut up because nobody talks about ethnicity. So they don't think about ideological diversity and so on. And I always give kudos to Amanza, who is going to be here on Friday night. She's going to be here on Friday night for recognizing the ideological tendencies in our society. But let's start with the news that the High Court, in the form of the Chief Justice, ruled that Itpadaji should be given the money for 2022 and that the government was wrong. Let me get your thoughts on that. First, you, Audreyanna, and then I go to Brother Tacuma.
Dr. Hines, I congratulate the acting chancellor for her ruling, and it was fair and timely also. And I think, I was telling somebody recently that the judiciary stands between us and civil war. I am convinced, based on the direction that Guyana is going in, that we could be slow marching towards a civil war. And I say that because, and so the judiciary stands between us and going over the edge. Because if we are confident that judges are going to rule fairly and that we're going to have justice when we go to the courts, then that avenue remains um, remains open to us. But if the people feel that all of the institutions are against them, the legislature is primarily controlled by the government, and so the government has the majority in parliament, and they can pass whichever bills they want, they can make whatever decisions they want. The government is in control of the executive. I know we're going to get to the development bank, but look at the debate about putting opposition representatives on the development bank. And I saw somebody, the government is pushing back. And saying no. So the executive is controlled entirely by the government. Even on boards, you hardly find opposition representatives. So the only arm of government that is left for particularly supporters of the opposition or people who do not necessarily, or independents, let's put it that way, is the judiciary. And if it reaches a stage where we cannot get justice in the judiciary, then we could go over the edge.
Very profound point there. Very profound point there that I want to associate myself with. As I said, the court, the high court, has not always ruled in the favor of this side of the political aisle, our side of the political aisle, and some of our people have become frustrated and they cuss out Roxanne George and so on. And I have always cautioned against that approach. Criticism, yes, but to move to the point where you lose faith in the judiciary, you might as well say Tata, because as you said, the legislature, the executive, the other two branches of government, there's no hope. As my neighbor Sherman used to say, poor hopes. He said, David, poor hopes, right? And so the judiciary, for all its imperfections, I think still remains, as you put it so eloquently, between us and another civil war. Brother Tacuma, your take on the court's ruling on the Apology matter?
I mean, it is always good to see when our judicial officials get it right and to show some impartiality and to uphold the law both in its in its fullest manifestations. But the problem we have in Guyana is that the courts don't seem to be able to enforce decisions when it comes to these political matters. I am not a student of the law, so I don't know whether there's legislation in the law that if the government refuses to carry out the instructions of the court, whether the court could move to take action against the government. I know the government has, as all citizens has, the right to appeal. And we know that they have used the right to appeal to go right up to the CCJ on matters that they don't want to bend on. So yes, we have to celebrate it as a victory. But to me, it was a partial victory. The test is whether the government would adhere to the ruling of the court and reinstate the apology, okay, the monies that are owed to them. No, I subscribe to the view that the law could only be effective when consequences are able to be put out on defaulting persons. You see, as ordinary citizens, we know if you violate the law, in most cases, the law could move against us and we have to pay the price. The problem in Guyana is that there is no tradition that clearly demonstrates that political people acting as a government, okay, when they violate the law, they pay any price. And this is what makes the whole experiment very questionable and create great doubts in the minds of ordinary people, because there seems to be a law for the ordinary people and a law for the rulers. So while I'm happy that Apology won the case, I'm still waiting to see how this will finally play out in the real world.
Well, the court has ordered that they pay for the rest of 2022. And as I said in my introduction, it is up to Ipadaji and others to say, well, the court has said you pay up for the financial year, the budgeted year. What about the years after then? Is the government in violation? And I'm arguing they're in violation of the treaty to which they've signed on, the International Decade of the People of African Descent Treaty. They've signed on to that treaty. And in withdrawing money, state money from Ipadaji, you're violating that treaty. That has to be tested in court. To the larger question that you're raising, it is whether the court has the ability to enforce its ruling. And the court is a co-equal branch of government, and it has oversight of the other two branches. Whether that oversight allows sometimes for enforcement, it's not. The court is not a lawmaking body. Let's say, for example, in the United States in 1965, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act, which, ostensibly said African Americans have the right to vote. But the states then used state rights to prevent African Americans from voting. And it was the Congress who passed another law saying that that the government must send troops into the South to accompany Black people to vote. So the enforcing branch is really the so-called government, the executive branch, not the court, right? And as you said, you're watching to see what the government would do. The government is the enforcing branch, the implementing branch, not the courts, all right? And so therefore, it is whether the government is going to do its job and enforce. And what do we do as citizens if the government doesn't enforce its law? Because the government is the enforcing branch.
But Dr. Hines, you're making...
Yes, go ahead, Sister Audrey.
Dr. Hines, you made a profound point. You made a profound point there. In the United States, you have the Congress and the executive. And so the appointment of judges, the judges that process the Congress plays a part in that process. And so our chancellor is acting, our chief justice is acting, and that appointment is made by the executive. So somewhere in that, the executive is seen as has some, or there's a perception that the executive has some kind of superiority to the judiciary, because the executive and the executive alone appoints the judges. And I'm saying the executive alone. Yes, there is the Judicial Service Commission, but the Judicial Service Commission does not have the authority in the same way the U.S. Congress has the authority as it relates to the process of appointing judges. So the whole method, our method of appointing judges is flawed. And therefore, these issues that we're discussing here, there are gaps in our society. How do we solve those gaps when the president has to confirm the chancellor and the president has to confirm the chief justice? So how is the chancellor now, who's an acting chancellor, now or the chief justice, if Ipadaji decides to go back to court for some kind of enforcement order on the government, then the chancellor and the acting chancellor and the acting chief justice, they have to think about their confirmation. They have to think about their career. So I think that what is happening here, there are gaps in terms of the integrity of our governance. And I think it says that the government lacks integrity. That is why the government will continue to govern in a way where they know that the people do not have any they cannot enforce, or they will not, or they cannot enforce the order of the court. And so the court can make whatever decision they want to make. And so it shows and so the big question here is, how can we as a people
Yes.
um
Yes.
have more integrity, or instill more integrity in our system of governance,
Yes, it has to be
in our
constitutional change.
executive?
It has to be constitutional change because, as we saw in the teachers' strike, where the court went beyond the call of duty, the court basically told the government, you ought not to touch a cent from these teachers. But the government did not follow the order of the court, because the court can make the ruling, but to enforce the implementing branch is the government itself. And the government then sticks to what is called the letter of the law. When the British left us with that system, they left us with a system that that was based on legislative supremacy. That is, that it was a legislative branch that hired the prime minister. Remember, the prime minister has to be part of the legislature. Now we moved away from that purely Westminster system, and we moved towards a mixed system where the president was no longer elected by the legislature. The president is elected separately. And so the legislature no longer hires the head of state. All right? And so we don't have a pure, we have a hybrid system. And so it is constitutional change that is needed to bring the executive from what it has evolved into. Not executive supremacy. We now have executive tyranny in Guyana. And so it's about constitutional change. And I'm not saying reform, because I think it has gone beyond reform, reforming, tinkering with the edges. Constitutional change to bring the executive from executive tyranny right back to executive supremacy, because the executive branch was seen as the branch that is representing the people, hence executive supremacy, but not executive tyranny. Brother Ogunseye, any follow-up comments from you?
No, the point I made, to me, is what, for me, was the important point. That at the end of the day, because you see, we have to look at this thing the way the lay person look at it. You're asking people to respect the law, and you're asking people to see the law in a certain way. When we, the citizens, violate the law, if I ride my bicycle and I miss a major road and the police stop me, he put a charge for me, came to court, the magistrate instead of fine. If I don't pay the fine, I could be sentenced to jail. So the citizen knows how the court manifests itself in its relationship with the citizen. And our constitution inherently is saying we all are equal before the law. But when it comes to the government, as I said before, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the legislation. I don't know, whether the things on the books that could force the court could use to force the government to adhere to the court's order. I know in some cases the court impose contempt.
Yes.
But
yes.
These are matters beyond contempt.
Yes.
You see, unless the court could really have a real impact on the executive, the rulings of the court doesn't worth much.
Yeah, and I hear you.
Only outside the willingness of the population to take to the streets and reinforce the ruling of the court.
And that's it. And
We're not there yet.
Yes, and
So
that's
the
it.
government got a lot of space for maneuver.
Yes,
they laugh
and
at the court and they laugh at us.
Yeah,
and they say,
but
we're going to show y'all how we play it.
Yeah.
That
But
is why
I'm answering your question and saying there's nothing in the law that the court can do to enforce its ruling beyond saying this is the ruling. When the Supreme Court in the United States passed Brown versus Board of Education, it was a ruling that brought to an end 100 years of segregation. But the court had no enforceable mechanism because the states decided that they're going to disobey the courts and they're not going to let black people into their schools. It took the civil rights movement. That is when the people took to the streets. They then forced the states to admit black people, starting with the Little Rock 9 and so on and so forth. So my answer to your question is that the court can rule. And you're asking whether there is any mechanism. No, there's no mechanism beyond ruling. The mechanism is what you ended by saying. It is the people who have the right under the Constitution to force the government to act, either by removing the government or by forcing the government through pressure to act, not the courts. So I just wanted to clarify that. Right.
I'm thinking, Dr. Hines, if another option could be a referendum, but this is a referendum on changing that part of the Constitution where we no longer have, where the legislature would appoint the president. So when we go to elections with the prime ministerial candidate, and the president must be appointed by the legislature. And so can we not, as citizens, develop a movement around a referendum, even if it's to test the validity of something like this? What do you think?
Yes, except that the 1980 Constitution, we had a 1978 referendum. And I remember well, Brother Kwayana pointing out to us, the 1978 referendum was a referendum to end all referenda. You remember, Ogun?
Yeah.
And so the referendum is not an option for us in Guyana. The 1978 referendum brought an end to referendum as we knew it before. So we will have to have constitutional change to reinsert referendum as part of our political legal architecture. But we do have certain laws that are settled in our constitution that can only be changed with a 2/3 majority, which is the closest you come to a referendum. But of course, that will be up to the politicians in there. So at the end of the day, we have to have constitutional change. One of the things, if you study French political history, you hear the French talk about the First Republic, the Second Republic, the Third Republic, the Fourth Republic, and so on. And I think we are now into, I haven't looked at the French in a while, but I know at one time they were into the Fifth or Sixth Republic. Those are the times that the Constitution changed. Every time the Constitution changed, it became a new republic. And the lesson from the French is that constitutional replenishing is vital to keeping a society alive. You know, people talk about the American system. One of the flaws of the American system is that laws that were made 250 years ago are still there. I mean, when you take something like the Electoral College that decides election, the Electoral College was implemented because the framers felt that the ordinary man could not make sensible decisions. And so the decision as to how a president is elected was taken away from the ordinary person and given to Congress. right, in the form of the electoral college. And 250 years later, they still have the electoral college. The French, from 1776, they have changed their constitution. We have had 2 constitutional change since independence, to our credit, 1980 and 2001. In 1980, we know what was the outcome of that constitutional process. We were given a constitution which, in a sense, institutionalized the tyranny of the presidency. And then in 2001, we scaled back some of it, but not enough. And so we are due for another constitutional renewal. And I think that's what you're saying, that we ought to have a movement for another, because it's 2001 to now it's 25 years. Generation has passed since then. And take Article 13, which was a suggestion of the WPA. Brother Ogunseye had a lot to do with the drafting of Article 13. And I'm saying these things because I want this population to understand that people like myself and Ogunseye, we made tremendous contribution as a movement and a party to this country that the country doesn't know about. And some of the young people prattle without knowing it. We wanted Article 13 to be enforceable. We introduced it, they accepted it, but the compromise was that it can't be enforced. All right? So a new constitutional reform, constitutional change, here I go with reform, means that we must try to get the Article 13s in the Constitution enforceable. I think that's the grand point that Ogun is making and you are making. There's some good things in our Constitution, but they are not enforceable. They're not enforceable. The whole thing about 30% of an electoral state should be women. WPA. We wanted it not just to be 30% of your slate, but 30% of your winning. So if you win 20 seats, 30% of those seats should go to women. They only accept it that your slate must have 30% women. We wanted it further. So I'm saying constitutional change must mean advancing those things that we were not able to do in the 2001, to advance them in the next constitutional process. We wanted full power sharing. And there was an appetite among the masses for it. Everywhere they went, people said they wanted power sharing. But the leaders didn't want it. And so they made a compromise. Article 30 was really a compromise not to have power sharing. You see? So much, yes, thanks. You all didn't know that. I know you all didn't know that Article 13 is we put it in there. The woman's story is WPA. So much for them little boys who want to watch Ogunseye and myself and talk up. Bishop used to say in Buxton, I teach little boys to walk and talk, but not to talk to me anyhow. And as I said to them little boys, I love you all. I love you all. But what I did, what Ogunseye did when we were your all age, you all are doing 1/10 of it. And so you all have no business talking to me and Ogunseye anyhow. And I stick by that. And God bless AUC Kwayana, 101 years old. And that man's contribution to this country is still to be known. And we are trying. I'm using this platform not to make Kwayana into a god, but to say the Burnham Jagan binary is not the full story. There were others who played pivotal roles in our independence.
But Dr. Hines, hence, before your next question, hence in 2026, people are developing an indifference to politics and government because by the government, by the conduct of the very conduct of the government, in terms of rejecting the one group, victimizing one group, and sort of people are seeing the development, economic development of one group, and to the exclusion of other groups or members of the opposition, so to speak. I think there's people are becoming indifferent to politics and government, and this is, and also one that's from the government, that's a government's behavior, and then on the opposition side, there seems to be, you said about 2 days ago that you've never seen Black people and Black leaders so confused. That was a profound statement. The other thing that you said, and I'll pause for you to ask your next question on that program, was that East Indian Guyanese now have political power, economic power, and cultural power. Those were profound points that you have made, which, coming back to the same discussion that we're having about the judiciary, the lack of the enforcement authority or ability in the judiciary, and the executive becoming a kind of a god, common God in itself. And so where does that leave the people who are experiencing real, who are having a living experience of discrimination, of the exclusion from economic development, and there's a facade. We see all these activities that 20,000 people being trained and 60,000 people being trained, but that's on the periphery. There's a reality that is happening for Black people, for supporters of the opposition, and for independents. Because I wouldn't consider Starbuck News opposition supporter, but look what happened to Starbuck News. So we can consider Starbuck News to have been in that independent zone. And so we're in trouble and we need solutions.
And I'm glad, Sister Audreyanna, because I'm going to bring Ogunseye in on that issue because you're raising a very important point. Often it's the Starbuck News ziz, those quote-unquote civil society, independent, middle-class oriented formations that give legitimacy to a false and flawed democracy. That is, they subscribe to a democracy in form. And I go back to the 2020 election where there was an impasse, where both the PPP and the PNC said, I catch your teeth in. All right? The PNC finally said to the PPP, we know you've been thieving elections all the time. And here in 2020, we're going to expose you. Right? We're going to show you where you rig elections before election day. And the PPP said, well, you used to rig on election day. And the PNC said, well, we know you always was rigging before. And that is what brought that standstill. The country was at a defining moment. And I am so glad that Ogunseye and myself and the WPA said, look, let us use this opening and break the deadlock for the last 60 years. Free up the system, because that is what this 5 months is about. Vincent Alexander agreed with us. Henry Jeffrey agreed with us. Let us have an interim government and use the time to repair ourselves. Starbuck News and all the civil society, they went with the political form. The PPP got most votes. Never mind the rigged, meaning people weren't here on the election day that voted, that accounted for almost one seat. And a whole set of other anomalies. They knew it. but they were just concerned with forms. And so therefore, they signed off in the elections. The external forces signed off on a flawed election. They knew it was flawed, but they looked at democratic forms rather than democratic content. And so the country could have repaired some things in 2020. In effect, they signed off. As the Americans said, the government was installed. The Americans never said the government was elected. The government was installed. And as you so nicely pointed out, the Stablik News who took that position became a victim of the monster that they helped to create. And that is part of the problem. You know, I said to a visiting group recently, Guyana, and I'm coming to you, Ogunseye, hold your thought. Guyana's change in Guyana doesn't come through normal democratic, through a normal democratic process. Change doesn't come through institutions working. Change comes to Guyana through instability. Instability. Whether it's 1961 to 64 instability that gave rise to a change in the political system from first past the post to PR, or in the 1990s with Desmond Hoyt being on the street, leading to the Ordmonson Accord and to constitutional reform. It's instability. Guyana fundamental change in Guyana does not come through the normal democratic process. And I said that to that visiting group, and I stand by that. Ogunseye, this question that Sister Audreyanna raised, and she said she observed me a couple of nights ago when I talk about the state of Black people and the ethnic division of power in this society, you know. And I want to say here as a disclaimer, and I'm sure you will make that disclaimer too, you know, when the PNC rigged elections during their term, we opposed it on the principle of fairness and justice. But as you talk to PNC people, they're telling you that they rigged it in the interest of a distribution of power, that Indians had economic power, and they felt they had to hold on, in the name of Black people, hold on to political power. Now, we oppose them on the way they use that political power. And so I want to put that disclaimer there. But is it not a legitimate issue in a country like Guyana, Brother Ogunseye, that the ethnic distribution of power must loom large in any constitutional change, any administering of power?
But that is the question independence posed to us. You know, I don't know, because of my age now, and having walked all of that long journey of fighting all of these matters, you know, I think we're making a mistake of trying to make the system work. This country has reached a point where Africans have to make up its mind. And I'm clear when I'm saying Africans, because I don't think we are at a point in our history where we could get African and Indians taking a common political position to bring about change. I don't doubt that there's significant Indian opinion who's opposed to the PPP, but when it comes to fighting and exposing themselves for whatever reason, they're not likely to come out and to join in a collective solidarity with Africans. The indigenous people, unfortunately, are locked in the hinterland, and a lot of what happened is basically in Georgetown and the coast, politically. That has been the history. And I think that the country reached a point where African community and its leadership, both political, cultural, religious, has to make up its mind on some clear issues. We all are saying that the political environment and the economic environment and the social environment are against our interests. We have no division there. There's almost unanimous agreement across the African platform. The question now that face us is what is to be done. And I don't know, we're trying to make this unworkable system work. It is not going to work. It is not designed to work. The PPP have its control over the system, and their design is that the system must not work. And if to the extent it works, you have to work in their interest. Now, Africans have to be stupid. You know, as a market man, I ain't got no university. We got people go to university, got all kind of degrees. Some go Sandhorse and this horse and all kind of horse. And if I could see very clearly what's the problem here. The problem in Guyana is that the PPP and by extension the Indian community, because that's the way it's going in Guyana, have become contemptuous of African people. They feel they have beaten, they feel that they have beaten us down to a point that we can't do much for ourselves. And that's why a lot of us also run and vote for Mohammed. We have lost faith in our own collective political strength. And the first thing to win anything in this country is that we got to revitalize the African collective political strength, not through electoral behavior, but through protest streets in our communities. We don't have to start by going to Georgetown. We have to, if we're in Buxton, if we're in Pleasance, that's where we start with story. And let the world see, and we pass through resolutions, calling for what we want, and let the world see what's happening in this place. And at the same time, we have a young people who we call the Jagdeo young people, who knows nothing else but the PP and Jagdeo government. The African community leadership have never thrown our young generation into any significant political struggle. So what do you expect? You got troops that you never throw into a war, battle. What do you expect? They can't be battle ready. And we throw them, we're making the mistake of defining politics simply in electoral terms. And this is something we in the WP have been fighting against for years, or intercept from our formation. Why we recognize the importance of electoral politics, we understand that there's something named politics apart from electoral politics. And you have to keep your hands okay and your fingers on that. The electoral politics will carry you to a point. But you got to invoke the wider political understanding of your political reality and fight with that. You can't wait every 5 years the chance to vote a government out, and in between the 5 years the government beating you up and doing what the hell they like, spending the money how they like, and you still fold your hand and wait for 5 years. That's a recipe for domination. And I don't know, I'm amazed that we have to spend so much energies, and I'm not talking about masses, I'm not talking about political leadership and the African elite, okay, in this society. You know, they rather to go and beg and to drink soup at the table of the PPP and some of the Mohammed table, rather than to mobilize their people for collective resistance, which will bring more economic benefits to them than anything that the troubles that they will get on the PPP table or Mohammed table. There's no way once Africans say they want half the power in the country, okay, and we pray to fight for it, we're going to get it. This country can't survive with half of the population going in a certain direction. It is our leadership unwillingness to do what the historical moment requires. The historical moment, we have argued, I mean, we have been dragged, WP have been dragged into elections and election politics, okay, for 3 cycles of election politics, in order to get solidarity to the African community, the PNC, and not to divide the thing, and so forth. But fundamentally, we knew that election politics is now the problem of this country and the problems of African people. And if our leadership don't learn that lesson, Are we listening to the white people? White people, they ain't got no interest in the liberation of African people or liberation anybody in Guyana. They got interest in stability and to get access to your resources and to exploit you. Okay, we got to live with the reality, but we also have to understand we must not shape a history of self-inflicted enslavement. And that is what our leadership is doing.
Brother
Dr.
Tacuma,
Hines, I would like to, I have a slightly different view to Brother Ogun in that, you know, when African Guyanese, last night I said it on my program, I started this program, Development at Work, with Audreyanna Thomas, and you can go to YouTube and find it. And the program is on Tuesdays and Thursdays live. But what I said is that, what I realize is that when African Guyanese say that the David Granger administration didn't do anything for them, they don't mean it literally. What they mean is that the David Granger administration did not conceptualize and design a different reality for them. What they mean was that after 23 years of the PPP being in government and the David Granger government came into administration, came into government, what they expected, when you listen to them and you really analyze what, not what they're saying, but what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that the David Granger's government did not conceptualize for us and design a different reality for us, so that it didn't matter who got into government after that administration. We will not, or African Guyanese will not be economically destroyed or devastated economically. So I think that's what African Guyanese mean when they said the David Granger administration did not do anything for them. They don't mean it literally. And so once we have that understanding, then if it is that they mean that David Granger, the David Granger administration did not conceptualize and design a different reality for them, a reality that would give them security, so that what happened in 2020, there was, when the PPP came in, a lot of African Guyanese communities were and still are economically devastated. And I'll give you an example just now. So as we think of our response to the current reality, we need to, so my focus has shifted to sort of, how can I work with communities? How can we work with communities to help them to conceptualize and design a different economic reality? The groups that I'm working with, I say to them, by 2030, you and your family and the members of your community who are interested must have economic and financial stability and independence, so that it doesn't matter who gets into government come 2030. You, your family, and your community must not be economically devastated again. And that is our focus. And
yes.
so while we think, yes, of how we're going to respond in terms of protests, etc., we also need to get down in communities. I was saying it on my program last night, and help communities to develop sustainable development and economic development plans. Buxton should have a sustainable development and an economic development plan over a 5-year period. What it is that you want to achieve in Buxton. Our community, we have a sustainable development and an economic development plan. And what we have, for example, the government is building this East Bank Road, and they're asking for 400 or 600 feet of our lands. Because we have a sustainable development and an economic development plan, we wrote the Minister of Housing, and we informed the minister that we are making available 100 feet of our land going east to west for the new East Bank Public Road. Because, and this is where also what we need to do is communities need technical leadership. They need
Right.
political leadership, but they also need technical leadership.
Technical leadership.
So what I
Yes.
provide to my community is that technical leadership.
Technical leadership.
Because what
And
people say, yes.
Sister Audreyanna, and thank
Hold
you.
hold on, David. I want to make a point. I've never mentioned the David Granger administration in any remark I made tonight. So I don't know why the sister invoked that.
No, but I don't think she was responding.
My argument gone beyond any administration. Okay, I'm saying that African people, if you watch and study the country, we, as our collective leadership, which involve our politicians, our churches, of everybody, we got to make up your mind. Could the winners take all system guarantee us access to economic wealth and political and social power? Yes or no? And if he said no, we got to fight to get rid of it.
Yeah.
No, I don't have no problem with what the sister outlined as economic activities to empower the community. But I was here at the age of 16 in Ascri. I've seen the manifestation that with 3 years of PNC government. I've seen it with PPP government. And I could tell you this, and with oil, and the speed in which oil is reshaping the economic wealth in this country, them kind of solutions for Black people is guarantee you enslavement. We have to break up this place and get power sharing, because if you take with big money, that's going to shape things very quickly, bringing in foreign people coming in. Okay, if you match money, you got no money, there you like cake shop business and your cake shop story. That's joke, man. We're doing disservice to ourselves in the context of oil and the rate.
Yeah. All right. Let the professor come.
When 10 oil wells pumping money into Guyana.
Let the professor come in.
When people come in, the Chinese, the Americans, the British come in to do business. Where is the African business homes?
That's right. Let the professor.
We got to stop playing games with this thing. We ain't got time.
Yeah. Let the professor come in here. I think it's not an either or position. Sister Audreyanna approach. Sister Audreyanna is grounded in what we call in Black studies the Black uplift approach. And we can trace it right back to Booker T. Washington. It's Black uplift. And Du Bois argued that Black uplift carries you to a certain point. Without power, without institutional power, the Black uplift is not going to guarantee you the kind of lasting economic generational wealth. And we can see it, right? There's always been people in the community that has been doing what you're doing, and it's a vital part of our politics. But it is not an alternative to power. And that was the argument between Du Bois and Booker T. And in a sense, what Garvey did was to come in and merge Booker T's argument with Du Bois' argument and create, up to that point, the greatest Black upsurge in the world. I want to say also, at the time of independence, the question was who will govern Guyana? Who will control political power? Because the white people were going, they didn't left with economic power, right? They didn't left with book horse. We had to nationalize. What they left us with was political power. And so the struggle was who was going to govern politically. And we killed each other for 4 years over that question. And as Ogun is saying, the question today is who controls the enormous economic wealth, notwithstanding the fact that Exxon carrying away 80%, 80-something%. Whatever is left is enormous by our standards. And who controls that? And what the argument is that elections cannot be the only means by which you achieve the power to control the economic resources that are coming to this country. It has to be an upsurge. Historically, look, in 2007, 2008, 2007 election in Kenya, it brought out the conflict between the Kikuyus and the Luos. And they fought each other and killed each other on the streets. And you know what happened? At the end of it, the government called in the opposition and they formed a power sharing government in Kenya. In Zimbabwe, the same thing with the OSAs and the other group. And Mugabe called in the opposition and formed a power sharing government. In South Africa, God bless Mandela. He came out, he didn't wait for an upsurge. He called in the white boy, de Klerk, and he said, you have a part in this government as a vice president. And later on, when the black group was singing up, he called in the Inkatha people, called them in and tell the Inkatha leader, you be the Home Affairs Minister. So we have had examples where ethnic groups facing conflict have moved towards the inclusionary government, power sharing government. And Guyana is probably the only place that has resisted it all these years. Suriname, the Irish, Switzerland, Netherlands, and you can name them. Some of them lasted, some have not lasted. I agree that our leadership has to have the courage. And what we don't see is that courage on the part of our leadership. They have not reached that point to muster the courage. And so it was a wake-up call when some of our people decide, to hell with you all, I go in and vote for somebody who's not African and hope that that is going to bring, because he's Indian and he going to shift the PPP. And that was their logic. You know, he's Indian, all you black leaders playing games, you all don't have the power to shift the PPP. And we go into this Indian man who we think got the power to shift the PP. Of course, they find out after the election that the Indian man probably even worse than the black leaders when it comes to challenging the PPP. That what this thing is about African people deconfusing themselves. Because the situation has got us bastardly, both at the level of the leadership and the followership. And that's where the problem is. I know you have some strong views, Sister Audreyanna, on the question of black leadership. Here is your opportunity.
Dr. Hines, I think we're in a state of paralysis. The government has beat us down so much that we've become weary and tired. And to some extent, both the black people and their leaders are in a state of paralysis. And I just want to quickly say, Brother Ogun, when I say let us organize at the community level, I focus mostly on, people who have land. And land in Guyana now is not small business. And it's not small money. And so, but the black people are not organized to respond to a government that is in the mode of land grabbing. And so when I was talking about this organization, I was talking about all of those different things, but I was also talking about black people organizing their land. But we can talk about that at another time. But Dr. Hines, coming to leadership, in the absence of having the leadership to drive this process or drive this change, we are finding our own solutions, like I mentioned, working with the community level, because if you venture out from that development and economic development, you need political orientation. And so because Black African Guyanese don't have that political representation, and I'll say it now, I know I'm going to get a lot of criticisms, but I'm going to say it anyway. It is my humble and most respectful view that Mr. Aubrey Norton should resign as the leader of the PNC. I tell you what, you see in Canada, Justin Trudeau resigned as the leader of, or not resigned, but he left as the leader of his party. We saw recently the United Kingdom, the British Prime Minister, he resigned and he is leaving as the leader of his party. an organization, I'm an institutionalist, I'm an organization, I'm a organizationalist, if I could put it that way. And a thing, an organization takes on the form of its head. What is happening in Guyana is because of what's happening in the head of President Ali and Vice President Bar Jagdeo. So what is happening with the PNC is as a result of what is happening in the community, right? In the head, sorry, of the leader of the organization. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to Mr. Norton in any way. But what I'm saying is that when you look at Black people in Guyana, you think that these people are either they ain't got ambition or they're under a system of oppression. The confusion that you're talking about is the lack of leadership. And so I'll tell you something, I'll give you an example. In my community, I have decided to put my body to defend my family land against whomever. And recently I had an issue with the police. I went to the Timari police station and they were pushing me around. And I said to the police, I said, you know what y'all gonna make me do? Y'all gonna make me call Mr. Muhammad. I couldn't call Aubrey Norton. I said, y'all gonna make me call the leader of the opposition. I got on the phone and I called Azudin Muhammad. He called me back. By the end of that afternoon, the police called me 3 times to find out what happened at the police station when I went there. The next morning, I had to go to the police station for 10 o'clock. And the police called me and asked me if I know that I have to come back to the police station. I only had to say to the police, y'all gonna make me call Azudin Muhammad. And the police responded to my complaint that I was making. So I am and remember now, I'm talking from an experience now. So here I am in a situation, standing up for my family, and I am faced with a political issue that my development experience and rule of law experience couldn't help me with. I couldn't call Aubrey Norton. I called Azudin Muhammad.
Why you couldn't call Aubrey Norton?
I couldn't call Aubrey Norton because I don't see Aubrey Norton out there representing people at. First thing Mr. Norton said is that when you go and protest and the police gonna lock people up and all sorts of reasons he has. I've decided if the police got to lock me up for fighting for my family land, then they're gonna lock me up.
Right. So you chose not to call Norton.
I chose not to call him, but
it's not that you couldn't call him.
I couldn't call him. Yes, that's true.
But you didn't call him.
Yes,
because
and that in addition to that, the other reason why I didn't call him also, I'll tell you why. And this is where I'm saying, and allow me to share this point because I think it's important.
Go right ahead.
And so, somebody was saying is that the opposition is behaving like a man who has his wife and his family, and you abandon them. And then somebody else come and is taking care of them. And then you come and you fighting up and saying, this is my legitimate family. And I discussed it with some members of my family. I said, this is the experience I had at the police station. And I've made a decision to call the leader of the opposition. My family collectively, who I spoke with, said to me, call Azudin Muhammad and go on social media and talk about the matter. Now listen to me, Dr. Hines. I have 250 family members in that community. We're sitting on a big estate. And I'm saying to you is, what is I'm trying to be careful, but still I'm trying to be frank. You understand? So it means that if Audreyanna as a leader call Azudin Muhammad and we see him as being able to, we don't need money from him. We got land. We don't need money. We don't need nothing material from him. We don't need jobs. We don't need nothing. All we needed in that moment was for political representation, for the police to pay attention to the matter that we were dealing with. And he didn't even have to show up just by mentioning his name. I'm saying I come with about 800 family members. So what I'm saying to the opposition is that I'm saying to APN, as I'm on this, let me say it. right? The APNU and the AFC, not the APNU, AFC, WPA, your PNCR. There's a misconception that your supporters will sit here, me at the Timeri police station, wondering who can help me from a political standpoint to fight this battle. And then my family collectively agreed, call Azruddin Mohammed. And I called him. Having that experience now, it is difficult for me to say that Mr. Mohammed ain't doing nothing for people, because the police, I need money, we need jobs, we need anything, but the police called me 3 times when in the morning, the sergeant went into her office and closed her door because she probably had political directives. But by the afternoon, they were calling me 3 times to find out what was happening. So what I'm saying is that, coming back to the example where a man leaves his wife and his family and he's not paying attention to them, and another man comes and he's taking care of them, and then that man comes and he says that this is my legitimate and legal family. And so what am I saying to the APNU and to the leaders? You are sleeping. I have made a decision, Miss Dr. Hines, let me tell you, that if the police got to lock me up for fighting for my family land, they will lock me up, because we will never be poor again. And if we have to fight for it, we will fight for it.
All right, let Brother Ogunseye.
What I'm saying is that the leaders,
yes, we've gotten your point. We have gotten your point.
But he's on the line.
We've gotten your point, Sister Audreyanna. Let Brother Ogunseye come in.
Sister, I mean, I don't like to get into PNC business, but I'm talking to you as a black activist, a black activist. You're unfair to Norton. If you had called Norton and tell him about your situation, and Norton did nothing, and you call Mohammed, and Mohammed did something, I think you got a stronger case. Now, Mohammed is the official leader of the opposition. He has constitutional and political power. And if you invoke his name in any state agency, the chances are, okay, that somebody will respond to him based upon that. And if it was David Hines instead of Mohammed, the same thing would happen. Once you're going with that cloak as a leader, officially opposition, and people call upon you, you call any institution in the state, they're not going to ignore you totally. Okay? So I'm saying it's not magic. That go without questioning. And if we are impressed by them little stupid politics I call, we're not serious. We're not serious. You see, I'm saying that you won't even have to go to Mohammed. If the African community did what he told them to do and WPA told them to do for the local government elections, turned the whole blasted thing into a major struggle, we won't even have to deal with Mohammed today. You see, we have to understand some things about politics and political engagement.
Dr. Hines, I would lose some friends tonight. I know that.
Well,
no, you're gonna lose me as a friend. But we got to engage. Okay, but again, the thing about Norton's leadership, I get the PNC politics, but I'm saying, you say he should go. I'm saying if Norton is only committed to electoral politics, then you're right, he should go. But if Norton is committed to electoral politics and non-electoral politics, and is committed to use his experience, okay, to fight for power sharing, then he should stay, because I see nobody else there who could fight for power sharing and got the experience. Politics, we got to be careful as African community. We cannot win this thing electorally. We ain't got the numbers, we ain't got the money. Politics, electoral politics now is not politics. It is not democracy. You're buying votes, it's billions of dollars people spending. The African community got no business community, they get no billions of dollars, and every election you're going to bleed. So you have to fight for the constitutional change to give real meaning and real power to you, and not elections. And if Norton is committed to electoral politics, then you're right, he should go. But I'm not too sure for the moment, because you see, when people call for Norton go, they call it in terms of electoral engagement. And that is not the total political engagement.
Not necessarily, Brother Ogun. Not necessarily.
All right. Sister, let me just say this. Yeah, I live in a community like you, and people call me all the time for all kinds of stories, and I quietly make representation. I don't make it public. Mohammed makes his representation public. I don't make mine public, but people in my community box them, whether it's police story, this story, they call me. And I make representation and get the same results as you got with Mohammed. I just don't make it public. All right? And so I just want to say that I just had a good friend of mine was telling me that Mohammed just go and share out the parliamentary money to people. David, I telling you, I see the man that's going to share out the thing. And I very quietly sent her the news story where I said publicly that we will use my parliamentary salary in the WPA to deal with causes in the community. And I said, she said, oh my God, I never knew that. And it's my friend, you know, right? It's my friend, right? And I don't blame her for not knowing that because there's a way in which Mohammed gets a pass. He's a new thing on the block. And I can tell you, other political forces do the same thing every day that Mohammed does. But our people don't give credence to it because we've been around long. He's the new kid in the block. And, you know, there's something to do with newness. But I just want to say to you that I'm speaking personally. You talk about your personal experience. I make representation every day, most of it successfully. Because where I am now, I have access to people in power. I don't go asking for favors, right? If people call me and tell me to go beg for favor, tell them no. Representation, yes. And so we do it on this side of the aisle. And I just want to say that we do it, but understandably, Mohammed gets the press, he gets the enormous social media coverage because he's a rock star at a certain level. It doesn't mean that we don't do our part. And I can tell you, like I said, at my community level, I do my part. All right, let's move on quickly because I
Dr. Haynes, can I make one last point on this? Yes. Professor Like Thomas said something. He said it's not only about leadership. He said what is also equally important is the perception of leadership. And I rest my case.
No. And that's inherent in or implicit in what I just said there. People's perception is as important as the reality. And as political people, we have to tangle with that. And while you raised the question, Professor Thomas, in 1997, people raised the issue of the Black uplift. And Professor Thomas said there are lots of things that we can do as a community. But for Black people, if we are not institutionally at the level of power, change the power dynamics, we're still going to end up in the same place. And I think that is part of the point that we're saying is not either or. But I'm glad for this discussion. I'm inviting Mr. Norton publicly to come on to this program and to answer some of those concerns, because what is real is that Norton has become the subject of debate. I don't agree that removing Norton is going to solve anything. I don't. And I have to be frank with you, right? I don't believe it will solve anything for Black people if Norton goes, all right? Because people are saying Norton should go, but who must come? And what is the justification for who must come? All right? I don't agree with it. Do I have disagreements with Norton's politics? I do. I have serious disagreements with Norton politically, maybe ideologically, but that does not mean that I am going to say, well, because I have disagreements with him, he must go. What I am thinking about is the larger African situation. What is the best path for us? As I said last night, when Mohammed calls for the removal of the 3 commissioners and to replace them with he 3, is that going to bring biometrics? Is that going to clean up the voters list? Is that going to have bring about an independent chair? If you tell me it can, I'm with you. But my political experience tell me replacing 3 with another 3 ain't going to change the dynamics of GCOM. So you're changing just for change. And I rather, when I grill people on this Norton must go thing, what is it grounded in? And what outcome you expect when that happens? How does that change the condition of Black people? How does it change the condition of Black people? And I'm saying that
it's not go from the PNC, you know. We're not saying go from the PNC. We're saying allow somebody else.
Yes,
take
and I hear
on the
that.
leadership
I
of the
hear
party.
that.
But still
I
be a
hear
part
that.
of all that wealth of knowledge and expertise.
I hear that. I hear that. We said Granger must go, and Granger went, and Norton came, and all of us applauded Norton when he came. The problem is bigger than the individual, sister. I think that is what Brother Ogun is trying to say here. The problem is what choices we make as an African people, and by extension, the opposition. Do we understand what we are dealing with? That 30 years from now, Black people are going to be so dispossessed in Guyana that we won't count in this country. And that our leaders, Norton, myself, Ogunseye, yourself, all of us have to grapple with that question. And to the extent that as leaders, we avoid that question and we are looking for all other issues. When we talk about power sharing, it's not PNC sharing power with PPP. It's Black people sharing power with Indians and Amerindians and Chinese and Portuguese. That is the difference between Ogunseye and myself on the one hand and fellow travelers on power sharing. It's not just about party sharing power or leader sharing power. As Guyana once said, he said, Black people don't want Indian people power. And Indian people don't want Black people power. That's what power sharing is about. A little piece he wrote called Common Sense About Power Sharing. And he's the modern father of power sharing in Guyana, right? It's about the ethnic division of economic and by extension political and social and cultural power in Guyana. Let's quickly get your thoughts on this development bank. It's as we know, the government has tabled a bill in Parliament, the setting up of development bank. Guyana is not new to development bank. We had Guy Bank, which was a development bank, right? We had the Co-op Bank, Native Padaji, Agda, and others were around a bank that was formed. And so we've had these development. In my own community, Guyana had formed something called the Modest Development Window. Somebody give you a small piece, and you take the small piece, and he say, all right, you can put this in a pool, and women can come and borrow money. They ain't got to show collateral. They ain't got to pay no interest. They do their business, and then they paid, and it lasted for a few years. So the idea of development bank is not new. It's not new. I want to say that. All right? What is it about this development bank that is proposed by the PPP that we have to be concerned about? I start with you, Ogun.
I see, Dr. Hines.
Yes, sir.
I'm presently probably in a bad state because all of those things to me is a waste of time. The PPP doesn't design anything to give any justice to African people. That development bank, okay, will serve to give the PPP friends and family more access to funds and get tricklings to African and Amerindian people. We know that. I don't have to see it manifested to know it. And I'm saying that don't waste my energy with that. I got to get them to the table or kick them out. That is what's important. Then those things will make real political sense. Unless we change the political environment, those things are neither here nor there. And in fact, we know exactly what will happen. So for me, I get a kind of intolerance to wasting good political energies into areas of struggle, which I know ain't got no positive outcome for the Africans, and by extension, the whole country. And I'm clear, and I come to this after umpteen years in the political struggle. I have never tell Indians not to fight the PNC and Burnham. In fact, I was vexed with them and Jagon of not fighting the PNC and Burnham more energetically. And if I do that to my own, the logic of it is I got to tell my own, you got to fight the PPP and fight them more energetically. And I know that there's not no organized Indian opinion out there that are going to tell them to do what we WPA tell Africans to do. So this is an African burden for now. It doesn't mean that when the struggle starts, you're not going to get change in dynamics. And then you might see a lot of Indians and other people who are not neutral, when they begin to see the shifting of power and they begin to see Black people fighting up and they begin to realize that the government got to make compromises, the whole ball game open up. And I'm saying that's the stage we at. Unless you change the political environment, you're not going to get nothing from GCOM and nothing from the PPP economically. You only playing the game that them and the foreign people want us to play. The foreign people, for their own reason, want working with the PPP for entrapment to the African community. Because they know very well that if the African community decide to behave in a certain way, the PPP will have to make compromises. And in the process of making compromises, they will lose some amount of control of the equation. Because it gives them total control ultimately over the PPP. Reconcile Guyana will objectively take away some power from them. And I'm not arguing old-time anti-imperialism. I accept we're going to live with the Americans. We have always had to live with them. There's nothing in this country from independence onwards that happened where the US playing a major role, and I don't see the changing. But we have to fight to make sure that in that reality that they're shaping in their own interest, we begin to counter-shape our reality in our own interests and let the chips come down. If the Americans want to go down to fight it, tell the world that they want to support the PPP for enslaved Black people, don't give you power sharing, don't give you access to the oil money, let them do it. History will judge them. But it mustn't be read that African leaders and the African community refuse to fight and accept self-inflicted domination. This is where we are at here. And if we don't understand the politics, we don't understand nothing. All of them things that we're talking about is joking. The people watching you laughing. But the day we start to get to the streets and start to kick asses, you're going to see what happens. The PPP is willing to make the historic compromise because they got political sense. The PPP know it is better to have half of this power with all this money going forward than to lose it totally. But they're not going to consider that quite correctly. If Black people and Black leadership don't want to fight for nothing, give them nothing. I have no problem with that. Give them nothing.
Mr. Audreyanna, your thoughts on the development bank? Is it a case of putting good things on bad stomach?
Dr. Hines, I think that I just like to say one thing. I am generally more careful than I'm being tonight, generally. But I feel that in order to solve our problems, to find real solutions, we have to be real. The development bank is a good idea. Like you said, we've had Guy Bank. We've had GNCB, remember? The Ghana National Cooperative Bank. Yes. We've had, those were good ideas. Yes, they were not perfect, but they were good ideas. And so the development bank is a good idea. It's an attempt to make finance available to the ordinary citizen. This is the assumption. But based on the behavior of this government, I understand what Brother Ogun is saying, but I'm a little confused. Somebody said to me that the problem is not with the leadership, it's with the generals. And so who is going to lead this protest? Who is going to, where are the generals? Or where is the leadership to lead? So I'm a little confused that we say that this is, we articulating, we saying what is needed. This is what is needed. But that resistance, that revolution has to be led. The reason the person told me the problem is not with the leadership, it's with the generals. He said, because the general is the one who has the plan. And he goes back and he re-strategizes and he re-strategizes and he comes back and he said, look, we need to change these strategies and we need to do this and do that. So we can't call for resistance and call for a revolution. And then we don't want to be frank that the generals need to shift down, and we need to promote the lieutenants and the majors and the and some of the other people who are willing to be a part of that kind or to lead that kind of resistance. But I find that there's a disconnect to say that we need resistance, we need a revolution, but then let's keep the same generals that we have, right? Who are saying that we're not interested in resistance, we're not interested in a revolution. So I am kind of confused, and I'm confused, and I'm being frank because the reality on the ground is that Black people are taking a beating, and so we have to come to terms with every single day, right? You see, you look at the Black people in Guyana, and somebody who is, let's say, a foreigner, they would think that we are unambitious, we don't have ambition. So how is it that we're going to, Dr. Hines said it, he said power concedes nothing without a demand. And so how are we going to demand this power? I read it, I'm not sure, I'm getting careful to call his name. I read somebody wrote, I think it was a Freddie Kissoon article, but I stand corrected. And he said that the David Hines and them calling for protests and so on, and who's going to lead the protest because nobody really following them, something to that effect. If it's not Freddie Kissoon, I stand corrected and I apologize up front, but I think it was somewhere in one of those articles. So I'm saying that we have a reality that we're dealing with, and that reality is we got to come to terms. Hug Brother Norton, hug Brother Aubrey, not in a hypocritical way, but hug him and say, I love you, Brother Norton, right? I love you dearly, but step aside as a general and let somebody else take on the position as a general. So we in demoting you. All we're asking is that you change roles, right? Dr. Hines, let me give you an example. I asked with the Region 3 chairman, let me tell you how bombastic this government is and why I'm saying this. Last year, December, we had a meeting. I'm working with some farmers in Region 3. And we had a meeting with the Minister of Local Government, Priya Manikchan. James Bond was at that meeting. And the Region 3 chairman was at that meeting. And so we were asking them to clear a dam on the West Bank so that the farmers can go in their farms. At the meeting, the Region 3 chairman said, oh, we can do that. That was on the 19th of December, 2025. In January, I called the regional chairman and I told them that I'm following up on the meeting that we had with the minister, and I'm asking you if you could clear the dams. You know what the Regional 3 chairman said to me? He said, y'all know something. He said, they got something named self-help, you know. This is the Region 3 chairman calling him to ask him for assistance to clear the dam for the farmers to go in. And he said, they got something named self-help, you know. All my life, I know my grandparents and my uncles and aunts, they were doing self-help. Let me tell you what else happened. After the budget, I called him again. We had a 1.something trillion budget. I called the Region 3 chairman and I asked him if they can clear the dam for us. You know what he said to me? He said they didn't budget for that. Now I'm saying this, but in December, I went to pay the taxes at the Coverdale Suesdyke NDC. When I went to pay the taxes, I had to go on the second floor of that bar where the police was investigating, where they had that rape case. So the police was investigating the rape case, but the NDC, which is the Ministry of Local Government, was renting the second floor of the man who the police was investigating his bar, and his bar was closed for that rape case. When I was going up the steps, and I realized what was happening, I said, I'm going to drink water and mind my own business. I ain't saying nothing. But when the Region 3 chairman said to me they didn't budget to clear the dam for the farmers, I said, no, I have to talk. Because while the Ministry of Local Government didn't have money to clear the dam, they had money to pay this man while the police was investigating his place, his bar, for the rape case, to rent his second floor for the Suesdyke Coverdale NDC office. This is that bar by the junction there. And so what I'm saying is that these are our experiences. We, the farmers from the West Bank, wrote the Ministry of Agriculture since last year, November, asking for assistance with land clearing the dam. Until now, we have not gotten a response from the Ministry of Agriculture. We used to write the Region 3 agriculture officer, and even the Region 3 officer has stopped responding to our messages. So while the president is going around and talking about all of these different things, I am sharing with you a reality that we're experiencing.
Yeah. Let's get Brother Ogunseye in here on the question of the general and the lieutenants.
Yes.
Just remind you, you're talking to. You're talking to. Hold on, Brother Ogun. You may not consider us generals. I know, and I understand it, right? You reference Freddie Kisoon, who know that Ogun and I are generals. They know that, the PPP know that. But you all in the black community don't promote me as generals. The only general is...
That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm saying...
let Ogun come in. Let Ogun come in. Let Ogun come in. Come in.
That's not what I'm saying.
Sister, given the way Guyanese politics develop, it is clear that if the PNC leadership decide to change course and to be more aggressive in their political posture and action, it make it easier for the African community, to bring to bear its collective strength. There's no question about that. To the extent that they don't do it, it becomes harder for us. But we have to learn from our history, not only all history from slavery, our more recent history. Remember, we had a problem with extradition killing under the PPP, where the killing of young people left, right, and center. The PNC ain't take up no gun and decide to fight the PPP to end it. It's African young people, illiterate, as people used to say. They can't read and write. They go to Sandhurst, they go to university, but they understand something. You're killing me. I know you're gonna kill me. Well, here, I gonna put a price for me life, and I could kill back. And they hold this country, this government at siege for at least 3 years or 4 years. Now, what more we want to learn? We don't have to fully depend upon our quote-unquote political leadership. And I'm not now saying that we must pick up weapons. I am saying that this time have arrived here that conscious African leaders, the way I always keep saying, cultural, religious, and political. So when the political leaders weak, automatically the cultural, religious is supposed to be weak. We got work to do. We behave like if Guyana, we facing Guyana, humanity never faced it before. Every oppressed people face what we face, and they find solutions. I'm not here to tell the government how we gonna march, but I'm here to say we're selling ourselves cheap when we present this challenge here. And as far as concerned, because we being oppressed by a set of little stupid boys who know nothing but battle and struggle.
Tacuma Ogunseye.
Another thing.
Tacuma Ogunseye, a general who spent time in jail.
Yeah, that's the problem
because
there.
He's a general who was charged and shackled a couple of years ago because he's a general, right?
All the army got to say to the government,
Right.
look,
We
Can I
got generals.
defend what I said?
We got
Can I-
generals.
Constitution,
Not
Can I
this not
defend-
our general.
Dr.
all
Hines,
the
I'm
army,
asking, can I
they want
defend
the
what
army
I said?
is
All
to
right.
say to the government, this is the constitution.
In fairness to me,
People
I'd
on
like
the
to
road, they're
defend
fighting
what
for
I
the
All right.
said.
Hold on, let Brother
We are
Ogun
not
finish.
going to, as the military, we train for fight Venezuelans. And we ain't turning we guns for the people in domestic problem. I just solve your problem. These guns they're using for them. And the whole ball game change. But how we gonna change? We got military leaders who are developed and got the commitment to the African community the way me and David and others may have it. But the African community have to force them into a crisis. You either shoot me and live with the PPP, or you make up your mind. This is where we there. Make up your mind. Where your loyalty there. That is where we have to force this equation. And I don't have no problem because I argue African politics have to be one based upon non-domination, and we're going to take all politics and give Indians, Amerindians, all the ethnic groups, okay, justice and equality. And once that is the platform, I am prepared to pay whatever price we got to pay for it. And I'm saying it. I am fighting for over 50 years for nothing. I know what I got to do, and I'm going to do it at the right point in time. I am concerned with Norton and the PNC. Black people and black leaders got to make up your mind.
Audreyanna?
Can I defend what I said, Dr. Hines?
Yes.
I didn't say that I agreed with what, if I think it was a Freddie Kissoon article. I didn't say I agreed with when he said that who is going to lead the protests because you don't have anybody following you. I didn't say that I agree with that, but I just said that I was confused because the perception that he has, that he is getting, is that the leaders are not, they don't want to, and not you necessarily, right? And not you necessarily, but the leaders in the opposition, they don't necessarily want to lead a protest, right? And we've heard that coming from our leaders. So I didn't say you, but Ogun and
No,
Dr.
no, you
Hines.
didn't say
No,
you.
I'm not
No, but
personalizing
Freddie
it.
Kissoon.
I don't think
Freddie
I ain't
Kissoon.
said any remarks before to me.
Yeah, not
Okay.
you.
I talking about
Freddie
the
Kissoon.
PNC leadership. Now you're
Yes.
talking about Mohammed,
Yes.
because Mohammed got black people votes and he got the right to bring them on the go up on the road, but nobody yet. I mean, they
So
do it.
Dr.
I'm
Hines,
saying,
Dr.
I'm
Hines,
saying that
after
the
you, can I
PNC
make a
leadership,
point?
you're quite right, that the PNC leadership has a big responsibility with black people because we support them for 60 odd years, non-stop, literally. And they can make matters easy. You know, if the PNC, when a little boys want fighting, they throw the weight in a certain way, all them killings will follow subsequently what will happen. We'll get a quick solution to the problem. But once the PP could deem them as criminals and tie the PNC hand, okay, the poor youths got to do the thing. They're in a different phase now. They can't play the game now because the kind of fight we're talking about is clearly political agitation, street protests that fall within the legitimacy of the Constitution, okay, and democratic politics. In America,
Yes.
people go to the streets every day. Why in Guyana we can't go to the streets?
I'm looking for good
And
trouble
if they
tonight,
want to
Dr.
turn
Hines.
street protest into something else.
Yeah. Well, we don't want too much trouble.
But-
Okay,
We just
if they want to
want.
turn it something
Dr.
else,
Hines,
then
one
the
more
choice they must
point.
make.
Dr.
Yeah,
Hines, I
yeah.
believe that I believe that there's a sense that Guyanese are becoming agitated.
Which
And I'll
guy
tell
needs?
you,
Which guy needs? Which guy needs becoming agitated?
I sense that we are becoming agitated. Because
African
even
Guyanese.
African Guyanese.
Okay, well, say that.
Because
Maybe.
for me to even be this frank on this program
Yeah.
and to let my guards down, I don't normally do this. This for me to do this.
Yeah.
It says that there's a level of frustration and agitation that is. And when I look at also, for example, when I see the vice president going around, he just came out of nowhere and he started to have these meetings. I think he's testing the vibes in the country. I believe that he is testing the vibes, and he is when I saw the Carter Center people came down here also, I sensed that they may also be testing the vibes. And so they
but the point, Sister Audreyanna, is that you've raised the question of Mr. Norton's exit as a key ingredient going forward. And it's a legitimate point that you're raising. You're not the only person that has raised it in the public. And I do not want to downplay it. What I'm saying is, are we interested in exchange or are we interested in change? When I remind you, when Mr. Norton assumed the leadership of the PNC, all of us supported him. And so therefore, was he change or exchange? And if he was exchange, then removing him now, is it change or exchange? And I think those are the fundamental points we have to raise. You, as you said, you know, where the generals, when you remove one general and you say, let the lieutenants, where the lieutenants? Where the lieutenants? Where are they? Where are they? And I think the problem here is not the individuals. As I said, when Freddie Kissoon go after Ogunseye himself, he knows us. He was part of us. And he knows that we are in the right direction. And what he's trying to say to you and other black people, don't worry them, they're crazy. They ain't got nobody supporting them. And you are not the only person who cites Freddie Kissoon. Other people have cited it. And Freddie Kissoon knows what he's doing because he was part of us and he's now a propagandist for the government. And his sole objective is to prevent what you want, which is for black people to get their hands on power. And anyone who he thinks is preaching that, he will delegitimize them. And it's to cite Freddie Kissoon as a means of delegitimizing us. It's not.
I understand that. And I understand that. To quote totally. I understand that. I just made the reference to say that we can't want a revolution and a resistance and not recognize that we need to make decisions as it relates to the leadership.
But you're talking to two people who born in
people's power. We believe in people's power. Leaders will come and go. Watching Palestine there. Israeli kill the Palestinian leaders, but then kill the resistance. Right. Because the resistance is not built on one or two people. And there's a we in Guyana, you got the Anglo-Saxon political mentality. So we see leadership in a narrow sense. Leadership is bigger than Norton. Bigger than even the PNC.
And that's the point. That's the point. They got plenty generals. And
anytime we got plenty generals there who could kick him anytime come. When you create the right condition. And they will throw me and you in a corner. And you'll see how they will take over. But you see what we want in this country, I'm clear. I don't want African to fight in this country for the sake of reproducing the same thing. That is why I'm saying I don't even trust in Africans winning any elections. To what end? You know, I mean, and this is nothing new to me. I have been sharing in Askria, we have worked out since in the early 70s that electoral politics is not the salvation to African people. And electoral politics has PNC rigging elections. When we in Askria tell them, bring in more black people, okay, change the population, make it balanced. Don't go with more Indians. You don't want to bring in more black people than Indians. But if you got a 15% deficit, don't invest in rigging elections that the white people encourage you to do under the Cold War format and place black people history in there. Use your power to change the population. So you and the Indians got the same thing relatively, and the Amerindians and others, we've got a decisive thing. That is the answer to rigging elections. But they didn't listen.
A little bit of history there, Audreyanna. A little bit of history there.
We don't discuss. Because Guyana is not in the state to discuss.
A little bit of history there. And you know,
if we really to open up the history, and if WPA was to open up its archives, you know, and the engagement in this country is a different story.
And you know, Askra encourage the government to set up communities on the borders. Take some black people and Indian people, well, not Indian people, black people, off the coast and set up black communities along the border to deal with Venezuela. And actually set up communities along the border. The government didn't pursue it. And here we are today.
But the government closed them down when we and them break up and break up. All them you Jama villages that we developed there and all them brothers we bring from England, America, all of the African diaspora, they ban them and they break it up. But I don't want to open up the black wounds. We are already damaged enough. And what we need is to get the people willing to
how I feel tonight? Sorry, Brother Ogun, you please finish. I feel tonight as if batting with generals.
I think black people
I throw some balls tonight too.
Learn the politics while they're fighting. We're not culturally and ideologically geared to do good politics in while fighting. That's not be mindset. As we fight, we're going to refine the politics. The electoral thing that take we away from fighting, white people know what they're doing. They're imprisoning you, taking you away from your historical construct. And we got to return to the historical construct.
All right.
The big challenge with that, Brother Ogun, the big challenge with that is that we have a current reality. How do we get from here to that point where we have a more inclusive society? And perhaps that's for another program, Dr. Hines, because people are out there going through the different realities. I mentioned the farmers not even getting a response from the Ministry of Agriculture and the Region 3 chairman saying they got something named self-help, while they pay the rent for the man.
Which means that's not where what it means, Sister Audreyanna, that's not where the solution lies. Depending on some response from some minister, the solution lies somewhere else. On that note, we're going to call it a night. It's been a spirited discussion. We're asking Mr. Norton to come onto this program and to talk. He was on my brother Kidaki program a couple of weeks ago. I have invited him to come on to this program tomorrow night. I haven't gotten a response from him yet. Tomorrow night we're going to be talking about the Wisma story, which one narrative said is a massacre. The other narrative which I share, it was no massacre. It was part of a larger ethnic conflict. And we're going to have some people from Wisma, Linden here. Dr. Adams going to be here. And Dr. Adams is in a peculiar situation. His mother was Indian during the time. Shama Solomon, who wrote a piece on the Son Chapman that is blowing up on my page, within 24 hours, when I last checked before I come on this program, 101,000 views. 101,000 views just on my page. So he's going to be here. Pastor London is going to be here. I invited Aubrey Norton. I haven't got a confirmation from him yet. So tomorrow, we're going to continue the fireworks that has been started here tonight. Thank you all, Brother Ogun and Sister Audreyanna. And Sister Audreyanna, congratulations on your new show. And congratulations on your courage in raising certain issues here tonight. We don't have to agree with you, but it takes courage to raise those issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hines, and to you, your viewers, thank you.
And to you, the audience, this is what this program is all about. Education, contestation, clarification, and we're going to continue tomorrow night. Was the Linden story, the Wisma story, was it a massacre? 2 people got killed. There was the usual thing. There were accusations of rape and pillage and all of that kind of stuff. But was it a massacre? Can we see the expulsion of Indians from Linden as a massacre, or was it part of a larger violence that occurred between 61 and 64? What are the dangers of extracting part of that violence, give it a label? Are we creating a guilty race with that narrative? We're going to explore that tomorrow night. Shama Solomon, Vincent Adams, Pastor Nigel London, and hopefully Aubrey Norton. They're all from Linden. And in the case of Norton and Adams, they lived through that period. So their narrative is going to be a live narrative. And we have the younger ones. I love you all, always. And the revolution is permanent. I hate to invoke an old timer, but brother, we're going to remember Trotsky, Leon Trotsky, said the revolution is permanent. And our own Walter Rodney said, the self-activity of the people is what pushes a revolution. Self-activity for self-emancipation. The generals will come out of self-activity. You don't impose generals on the revolution. The generals come out of the struggle. As a 15-year-old, I heard Walter Rodney says, history is made by ordinary people. He said many other things, but now, in my 14-year-old head, I run home to my auntie. I said, Brother Ogunseye, bring a man here. And I like what the man said, I want to join the thing. And she said, join if Teacher Sydney is part of it, Brother Ogunseye. And I joined as a 14, 15-year-old. Ogunseye was 21, little bit bigger than me. And we became generals. Arising out of struggle. We weren't imposed by people. We joined the struggle. And we became lieutenants and generals. Self-activity for self-emancipation. Brother Bob Marley said, the hotter the battle, the sweeter the victory. Saying the same thing like Walter. The generals and the lieutenants arise out of struggle in action. We don't create generals. When you create generals, the generals hijack the struggle. So, with all due respect to those who are not to go to this PNC story, I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that. If North must go, the PNC people will decide that. But the black liberation struggle cannot be confined to a single leader of the PNC. I feel strongly about that. All of us have a role to play. What Martin Carter says, this I've learned. Today a speck, tomorrow a hero. Hero or monster, you are consumed. Like a jig shakes the loom. Like a web is spun the pattern. All are involved. All are consumed. This thing is bigger than Norton. If the PNC want to lick down in the party and throw out Norton, that's their business. My business is black people's survival in a country where people joking them in the eye. And their liberation is not confined to Norton or David Hines or Ogunseye or any single individual. It is certainly not confined to Muhammad. Show me how Muhammad has qualitatively move black people from a state of denial and oppression to a state of liberation. I hope 6 months from now we are saying Mohammed must go. Black people, you all get out of this nonsense of who must go. It's not who must go, it's who must come. Not who must go, who must come. The Indian people get a lamuta. And a them lamuta, them a walk with them. Kankawa, them a walk with them. Because they got their eye on the money. Black people taking the eye off the money and watching nothing. Mr. Danny. Mr. Danny in boxing. We call him Pum Danny. He said, Pum Danny, gotta watch me. And that's what we into. And we're watching Norton. And we're not watching the money. 30 billion barrel oil. We're watching Norton. Gotta watch me. No, that's what Norton must say. Gotta watch me. Gotta watch me. I will the gala we watch them. And I will now watch the 30 billion barrels of oil and the proceeds that will come from that to us, and how oil will continue to be underdeveloped black people because we just mix up the fight. If nothing gotta go, you gotta go. But the end the primary fight now. The end the primary fight. With all due respect, the primary fight is to keep black people in the hunt, in the game, so that that money that coming from oil will not escape our clutches. Keep your eyes on the prize. There are the battles. There are the fight. I got my problems with Norton. Everybody knows that. I got my problem with Norton. But if I got to put my energy, is it going to be against Norton or against the rulers who have a grand plan to deny black people the patrimony in Guyana? Which one? I'm going to put my energy on. Pumdani, had them boxing people, they must be dead with laugh. Miss Deeker husband, he said, Pumdani, gotta watch me. Gotta watch me. We watching Norton, and we not watching the money, the wealth. The wealth. I said, you mustn't watch Norton. He's part of the mix. You mustn't watch me. All of us have failed. Our people in many regards. All of us. Keep your eyes on the prize, black people. Some fights are primary, some are secondary, some are number 3, some are number 4. We have to decide at this point what we're fighting and what level the fight is against. I love you all always, always. And because of that love, we continue to put our lives on the line. Sister Audreyanna has put her life on the line, but Ogunseye been doing that from since he was a little by short pants. As we said, since Noah was a scout. And he's still there. And you all remember when they shackled 2 years ago? Because he's a general. You don't shackle non-generals. He's a general. Not only a general, but a general who can train generals.